All right.
All right, boys. It's Ecclesiastes time. It's time to get into the word. I am here with Jason and Joseph, and I am Jess, and we are going to have basically Bible study with Ecclesiastes, and we've each prepped separately or haven't prepped, and then whatever happens, happens. That's the name of the game here. I do want to start out with a couple opening questions, just that I'm curious about. I've read some stuff and listened to some people talk about Ecclesiastes, but I wonder what you guys would have to say. So my first question, just to set the stage here, is what is Ecclesiastes doing in the Bible?
Because it's good. Because God said it. When God said something, you write it down. No, that is a good question.
I mean, I kind of mean it two different ways. I mean, why is it in the Bible? And then also, what is it actually, what do you think its purpose is? And what is it interacting with? And kind of big picture wise.
Mm-hmm. So I have two parts to that, right? So two questions. So the first thing is that I don't know about the Christians, but certainly the rabbis recorded that they debated whether to canonize this book. This was not shown. And, there's questions about exactly why they did it. Was it because it was, because Solomon wrote it in theory? Was it because the end message at the very last chapter, was kind of saved it, redeemed it? On the other thing, though, of what it's doing, so I think it's one of the three theodicies of the Bible, and they're all different, right? So Job and Lamentations and Ecclesiastes are the three books that are theodicies. They do other things too, but that's kind of their main focus. And in so doing, it gives a different answer than Lamentations and Job. But I also, you'll love this, Jess. I've been reading, my Job and Ecclesiastes side by side, and I'm pretty sure that I now have a theory that that the middle of Job, that last speech he has before Elihu, is actually a response to Ecclesiastes. So I think they're actually talking to each other, and Elihu's actually is in some sense and it's not an attempt to defend Ecclesiastes. He's trying to do something else, but he's trying to respond to Job's critique of Ecclesiastes, I think, is sort of what's happening there. And that's why you have that wisdom poem in the middle of his speech. It seems kind of out of place. But it feels it's out of place in the same way that Ecclesiastes has random wisdom through it. It's wisdom's awful. It doesn't help you. It doesn't do anything. But actually, I'm going to give you 3 chapters on wisdom in the middle here because it's still better than being foolish.
Yeah, there's still better and worse.
There is something there, but we can. So I think it's interacting there, and I think it does it in a way. The Bible clearly had wisdom, and there's we've talked about how Job is anti-wisdom in many ways. For those who have not been, see Jess and my other video, and we'll put a link here.
All right. Description.
Yeah, but I think this is the bridge between those two in a way that I would have missed otherwise if we hadn't had that other conversation, where he. And there's a whole question of on Ecclesiastes of is Ecclesiastes wise, right? Not he says at the beginning, he's setting out his heart. We haven't actually started the book, I know, but I'm diving in. In the after the initial introduction, right? So in verse 13, chapter 1, I've given my heart to Lidrosh Velator, to probe and to scope out wisdom and to look at all things under the heaven. And yeah, you have the translation here. Okay, to verse 13. So the one in the middle there. I applied. Okay, I gave my heart, not applied. I gave my heart to seeking, and searching out by wisdom all that under heaven. It is a bad business. Sorry, I'm correcting your translation here. It's
No,
a
you're
bad
fine.
business that God gave to the children of man to be concerned with. Maybe I don't know. I don't know how to translate that. Busy is a weird word there. Man, what translation is this?
Yeah, it sucks.
I think it's
Seriously.
ESV. What do you want me to do?
Oh, I don't even know. You want to do
Mine
that?
says
Is it
burdens.
NKJV
New King
maybe? What's
James.
that one do for 13? I set my heart to seek and search. Okay, better. At least on this line, it's better. Okay, maybe this will be. So he's trying to seek wisdom, and he basically finds that it's not good, and that wisdom will lead to more distress and anger, and like it's not this like be all and end all, and he's like unhappy with that because everything in the Bible up to this point, like you'd have thought wisdom was the answer, and it's not. But he's not reacting to it like Job because it's not. It's really interesting. Actually, if we go one line up, Ani, right? So the way he introduces himself is, I am Kohelet, right? In fact, he used, I don't know if you got this part in this book, Jason, yet, but in the Brown Ecclesiastes.
The brown one.
There's a fascinating point, which is this guy uses the first person a lot. In fact, more than any other speaker in the Bible. It comes up, I can't even remember how many times. In this book, it did mention it. It's just like a million times in these first 3 chapters. It's ani, 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 ani. It's all about me. And, one could say maybe that's why he was having trouble with wisdom, because he was very self-focused. But it's funny because Job, who's having all these things actually done to him, does not use like talk about himself anywhere as much as Ecclesiastes does. And I think like the type of evil they're encountering seems different, right? Like he's talking about evil almost like, I tried all these things, but like I'm trying to generalize to all people. And Job is just like saying, I know that I have integrity, and like and I only have that data point basically. And like that's what I'm now trying to like rebuild from after the mechanized world collapses. But like Ecclesiastes doesn't have that. So I think it serves as a good contrast to Job, but also like as a bridge to Job, because Job is going to use the Ecclesiastes argument and say, I thought that this was going to work. Like I came to the conclusion that wisdom isn't enough, but like I could just do what God wants me at the end of the day, and that would be good. And even that wasn't enough to save me from this. And like,
I mean, I've said this before, but I always thought that Job sort of like, just briefly, I think you can kind of see how Job both applies Proverbs. So, like just traditional proverbial wisdom, do good, you'll receive blessing. This is even Deuteronomy. Do evil, you'll be cursed. So Job does what is right, so he'll be blessed. He is blessed. Everything's just sort of working. And then even when in his reactions to the disasters, is very much an Ecclesiastes type statement. It's like, maybe it's there in Proverbs too. I don't know, but it's when he says, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And then even in his second statement, when he says to his wife, shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil? Or shall we not receive the bad? And that's very much an Ecclesiastes type statement. But, for Job, it does become personal because it becomes too much for him, and it doesn't help. Both Proverbs and Ecclesiastes sort of fail him when it comes to him being able to deal with it. So then we get into the book of Job, which I can do, but
sure, we don't need to necessarily go down that tangent.
Yeah, but I kind of like, as far as the wisdom books, I kind of see like Proverbs is very much sort of positive, like here's the good things you should do, and the things you should avoid, so you can be blessed and not um, and not be cursed, I guess. And then Ecclesiastes kind of like is like, yeah, but time and chance sort of happens to us all. Like, what are you gonna do? You can try to do what's good, but it may come to a bad end, or there's these people that are not doing what's right, and they appear to be, you know, but yeah, Jason, I want to. What do you think it's doing in the Bible? Like, what's your impression? Like, how it's
Why it's in there? I mean, it's kind of hard for me to answer.
what
I
does
don't
it do
know.
for you? Like in relation to the other
that
scripture?
I think that's easier to answer because I know I don't really know how any books get in the Bible. I don't know the criteria, but because I feel like you could maybe ask the same thing, or people probably ask the same thing about Job and a lot of other books. For me, it's the book I've read the most. It's the book that's changed me the most, and I feel like it helps wrestle with the existential questions, I guess. Like I've kind of summed it up before as like it seems like it helps me. There's a verse I think in Colossians where it says, set your mind on things above and not on things of the earth. And I feel like it helps me go through life doing that, or being able to see the broader picture, I guess, in everything. And so I think it really does. I think it tries to not answer the why question, but just tries to confront it and be honest with it. And yeah, it was one of those books too where I first started reading it and I just was like, this makes it doesn't really make sense to me. I loved the book when I first read it, but it's still just like, I don't know what's happening here. Like, this is just it. And then when you read it, it just kind of feels like a weird ride. It's like, everything sucks. All right, but enjoy life. It sucks. And it feels like you're kind of on this weird wave. But I could tell it was like doing something. And so I was like, I'll just keep reading it, just keep reading it and keep reading it. Yeah, and I feel like, yeah, I don't know why necessarily it would be in the Bible. It does seem to pull on a lot of other areas of the Bible, but then sometimes I just wonder if that's just how language is anyway. Because you use one word and then you can reference it in another place. But
I think
it
it's a lot
is
more than that, because it seems to be referencing things much more explicitly than just language.
Yeah. That's what when I was reading the book, it seemed. I think because they were even one of the books I was reading, he was talking. I think it was the Brown book. Yeah, the Brown book, and he was talking about the connection between Solomon and Egypt. He wasn't even in the book of Ecclesiastes yet, and it seems like in the Hebrew that seems a lot more explicit when you're reading the Hebrew. Because when you're reading it in English, I'm like, oh yeah, I could make this connection, but then I always feel like I'm kind of like I'm cautious that I'm making a leap. I'm like, am I doing some sort of acrobatic to connect this just because I see these words? But then when it's in Hebrew, it seems like it's a little more pointed, and it's like,
that's certainly true. Right. I remember the first time you asked me about Ecclesiastes years ago. You asked me about Abel being Hevel, right? And it's very clear in the Hebrew that the word translated as vanity or fleetingness, breath, transitoriness, like that word Hevel, Hevelima, Kol Hevel, like the first line of the book, or second line, is like, in Hebrew it's very obvious that the word Hevel there is the same name as the guy who was killed by Cain in Genesis 3. But like you don't know that in any translations unless they really tell you that, because like how would you ever know that? Did I send you this book as well?
Yes, I had that one.
Okay, good. Yes. So this book is all about this, right? It's all about, like, it has a whole chapter on Cain and Abel, like and how all the references in Ecclesiastes to Genesis 1 through 4. There's a lot of them. And he kind of, that's like the first 100 pages or so of this book. And well, what's interesting, he has a very interesting theory. I don't know if I get into the theory of this specific book, but he does see this as someone, maybe Solomon, or someone who like is writing as Solomon. We can talk about that, but like someone who in the putting themselves in the shoes of Solomon, feeling that like they did seek the knowledge of good and evil, God was okay with that for Solomon, right? That's a difference between Kings chapter 3 verse 1 Kings chapter 3 verse Genesis 3.
Yeah.
Is that Solomon does not pick to live forever. He does pick the knowledge of good and evil, and God says, good job on picking that. That was something you pointed out to me years ago. So that's like, that was a Jason insight from like 3 years ago, at least. And but then he gets turned away and makes choices because of women. And like, there is a way to read this book where Solomon's comparing himself to Adam and like saying, and also his kingdom is divided and he has, you know, and like the son, whatever, like there's a lot going on with, he doesn't have children who killed each other, but like he actually grew up with brothers like that. And then his own son is like off the rails. So like he can compare himself to Adam in a lot of ways. And Solomon thinking of himself as Adam is like a really interesting way to read this book, because you get a lot of references to kind of both of those things. You get like the 1,000 women kind of reference, which is a Solomon reference. You get, I built houses and planted trees, and like the building of Jerusalem, but then planting trees is also Adam's thing, right? He's supposed to be tending a garden, right? So you kind of have this interesting back and forth between these two major sets of texts. But then where this book goes further, it actually points out there's connections to the story of the spies in the Jet Desert too. So there is like another set of connections. So here, like for instance, in that verse I took out, 113, right? The word used for to seek, or the second word, to probe or seek out, you have search out in this one, lator. That's not a usual word. That's not the word you would normally use in biblical Hebrew for this, but it's specifically one that's used in the Numbers version of the spies story, of the spies that go into the land of Israel. Moses sends them the 12 spies. Like they are meant to search out the land. And then interestingly, like they bring back the fruit of a tree, and, it's grapes. And then there's a whole, like, is grapes the original fruit of the garden? Grapes and wine drinking comes up a lot in Kohelet and Ecclesiastes. And like Noah, of course, with the grapes, who implies he's a second Adam. So like maybe, right, there's kind of a whole theory here, but like it is interesting that there do seem to be like, and that's also a fall, right? Like they could have gone into the land. They can't go into the land. They're cast out. They're prevented from going into the land after the spies by swords, the Canaanite swords at that point, right? But there's like kind of another story of the fall that happens there, but it can also be seen as playing with this text, right? So there's like wisdom isn't enough, but it is useful, but it's not enough. And then there's like these limitations, and there's misuse, and it can cause you to choose improperly, right? And lead to all these consequences where then you're in exile. And that's why I think like this is it's a good theodicy to respond to Job, because in many ways Job is also that, right? Job is, I thought I was doing everything correctly, and in fact he was. Like that's where Job takes us further, right? I thought I was doing everything correctly, and now I'm in this exile basically from my friends and family, and I'm like cast out by this wind. But like, yeah. Anyway,
what is this that means when he says I'm going to search out by wisdom? I mean, that's the English translation. Maybe it's different but like he's not searching to find wisdom. He's using wisdom to then spy out all the things that are done under heaven. Is that?
Yeah. So in this part of the introduction, he's saying, yeah, wisdom is the means to the end. It's not the end. He's not trying to get wisdom. He does say in 16, yeah. So and this may be like the backstory, right? I had spoken, because it's in past tense. So to go 3 lines down, right? Wow, okay, maybe I don't like this translation. I spoke, I spoke to my heart, or with my heart. I spoke with my heart, saying, so here I've become great, and I've added wisdom, and now I'm going, to above anyone in Jerusalem, and I've seen, it's interesting, my heart has seen much wisdom and understanding, knowledge, and now I will give my heart to know wisdom, and to also know madness and folly, right? So he does like have this kind of back and forth where like he wants to use wisdom, but to use wisdom you have to acquire wisdom. So he's deciding, now that I've like gathered all the wisdom I can, like I'm going to use the wisdom I've gathered, And of course, like if this is Solomon who asked for wisdom, this would like make a lot of sense. Like he got all the wisdom that was possible to get. He now is going to like give himself, participate in that wisdom, right? Like, so wisdom is something to acquire in earlier, but now in 17 it's something to actually like do.
Is this the knowledge
yourself.
of good and evil, and that he's then exploring the world
So
with?
he will use the phrase good and evil once in Kohelet. So he's not in Ecclesiastes. I'm gonna automatically switch back and forth because I don't. But forgive me. Yeah, so he's gonna switch back and forth. It's interesting, right? So he's gonna give himself for this wisdom, but then of course immediately he's gonna say in the next line, like, you know, in much wisdom, you know, there's vexation, and wisdom there's much vexation. And the one who adds knowledge will add increase heartache or pain or something. Right. So like it's I'm going to do this, but I already kind of, is he giving us the end of the story, or is he already telling us what his like conclusions are at this point in his life? Like, is this, there's kind of a question with this whole book. Like it does seem to have a I mean, it's winding, but like it seems to kind of go from beginning to an end, where like I'm going to start on the path of like trying to do stuff with wisdom that or found wisdom, and I'm going to end. He ends in like kind of death, right? That like chapter 12 is this great kind of end of life. Like, and is it linear or is it like not linear? And it's really hard to tell with this book because there are parts of it that like keep looping back and he keeps repeating himself, and like, you know, but he does seem to.
It seems that when he loops back, he does add on to, like he iterates. So it's a little, it seems like he's building on his loops. He's not just.
Yeah, sometimes building and sometimes changing. So like one of the interesting things is when he says Hevel, that everything's vain, he's going to keep saying it through the book, but it goes from a negative to like less and less negative to a point where it's like neutral or almost positive by the end. So like there are things that are building, and there are things where he's actually like seems to be accepting or like changing his mind about like certain aspects of things, like wisdom too, right? He's going to be kind of like, I want to use wisdom, but wisdom sucks. And then like he's going to come back and like reassess wisdom as like wisdom is still better than than the fool who doesn't have his eyes in his head, but like don't think it's a solution to everything. Like it's just like it's just, you know, better does not mean perfect. And it's and there's kind of a collapsing of wisdom. Talking actually a fencing in, maybe if we're gonna use Job language, right? Like that wisdom, you know, do the wisdom thing and everything's good is kind of Proverbs. Do the wisdom thing and like it won't be perfect, but at least it's like better than than, you know, not doing wisdom thing is Ecclesiastes. And then Job is like, do the wisdom thing and it might suck. And you're not going to know why.
You already mentioned the word Hevel, but
we can go back to it.
So it gets translated as vanity here. I think in the NIV, which I first read when I was a teenager, which is hilarious. Let me just pull it up here. And I laughed when I read this. It says meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher.
That's
which is not
what?
Yeah. But so, for me as a 15-year-old, this was hilarious. Like I thought this was so funny that this was in my Bible, because like but I was listening to Tim Mackey talk about Ecclesiastes. So Tim Mackey's a Bible Project guy anyway, and he talks about that, and it's even footnoted in the ESV that it should be akin to like smoke, mist, vapor, and
should be as strong, but I know it's Michael Fox, who's one of the leading translators, likes vapor a lot. I think smoke adds a weird element because smoke.
Well, I wonder what you think about this. He said the reason why he likes using smoke or mist is because it has a shape to it. You can see it. There's a
but Hevel is breath, so it should come out of the person is the problem. So Hevel, like really, if we're gonna look at the etymology, it comes from. So it's really like the breath on a cold. When you see your breath on a cold day, like that form of vapor mist that has a shape I think a much closer metaphor. And it has to, and if it doesn't come out of you, it doesn't quite make sense because it's externalizing in a weird.
Sure.
So when I first started talking to Mitch about this book, I remember like having this weird repulsion to that translation of meaningless, of just like, well, it can't be meaningless. Like obviously there's got to be meaning in everything. But think there's like a weird, I don't know the right way to say it. I almost said idolatry, but I don't know that that's right. But there's something weird for me to cling to that. Like I feel like I should kind of let it lie a little bit, because I feel like if it was, okay, I'll say this first. When I was thinking about this conversation, I was thinking about that word, and like if there was like a Christian, or like just what you would say. And I feel like Christians might understand it more as like that term giving up the ghost, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that would be a more accurate thing, but then I feel like that, to experience that last breath of a person, does have at least some sort of emotional, meaningless feeling along with it. So where like someone actually just goes and their breath leaves their body, I think there is that feeling of like, what's the point? Like there is a meaningless feeling to it. I don't know that that's a good translation. Like I feel like it's probably bad, but to throw it, I feel weird to throw it out, because I feel like when I was kept wanting to throw it out before, it was probably not correct.
I'll say,
Yeah, well, the smoke has a shape to it, but you can't grasp it. It ends up becoming, and it can disperse and disappear.
So I like shortness of breath, honestly, or ephemeral breath, a fleeting breath, which is sort of in between the two. So Alter uses merest breath. I don't like merest there. I think it's a little out of an adjective in that choice. But and we have a connection for that in Exodus, because the people are they're kotzer ruach, which literally means short of breath. When Moses, he goes to Pharaoh the first time and he says, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, you guys are lazy. I'm going to make you start getting straw now, not just like make the bricks, but you have to get your own straw. And the people don't listen to Moses because they are, now it says kotzer ruach. That's an interesting phrase, because it does mean short of breath, but it also means they're short on expansiveness, because breath expands you, right? And they're also short of spirit, right? So like ruach is pneuma, right? It's going to be used, right, as spirit in translation. So like to me, that's a very different feeling than like the moment of death meaninglessness. It's like there's a way to come at shortness of breath where you're anxious and you're or afraid or whatever, or you just are tired from like working. You just worked out, right? And like you can't think about other things. You don't have the capacity of like an expansiveness of mind to like hold other things or care. Like you're just not going to listen to someone when you're like in that space and state.
Does that because when I was reading a little bit of the Erica Brown book right before this, she mentioned one translation, or somebody mentioned that it could be absurdity. Does that kind of relate to what you're saying a little bit? That feeling of absurdity, like when you're just out of breath, and you're like, "This is absurd." I don't know.
Yeah, there's something kind of. I could see that kind of from like a Camus almost like perspective, right? Like that, now he might get that feeling from like existential, like nausea or something, but right, but like there is like an absurdity, right, where it's just like. So I could see that. I don't know. I wasn't going there, but yeah, I could see that, like, where you're just like, dude, like this, like this isn't what like, like the world is meaningless, and like it's driving me nuts, right? Like, it's an interesting way, because Ecclesiastes, like, there's different ways to like read what his tone is, right? Like, is the kind of like being kind of this like slowly working up to an argument preacher. I think when they translate Kohelet as preacher, which is weird, because Kohelet, the reason it's called Ecclesiastes is it means someone who gathers, right? Gathers a community, a kahal, right? Like ecclesia, right? He's gathering the ecclesia. A Kohelet, so that's he's this gatherer, and that's why at the end, right, he says that he's gathered all these things, right? Like that makes a lot of sense, but he's like, what's the tone of this? Like, what is this? Is he actually? And I think when you talk about translating as preacher, also like makes you think like, hey, he's standing in Jerusalem, like in a synagogue or like on the street, like preaching. Like the text does not say anything like that. This seems like something that he's like writing, like it's almost like a personal journal of like his own kind of meandering over many years, like thoughts of like trying to do things and them not working, and he comes back to the text and he like revises and he's fixing and he can't figure it out. And like it does not seem like something that you would preach. 1, 2, it's weird in that like, what is his emotional state when he's writing like everything's vain? Is he like in that absurd existential nausea state? Is he like in a, I'm gonna try to do this like logically, like, okay, this didn't work, okay, now we're gonna try this, but no, that wasn't good. And it's really interesting to me because when I read this book like in my head in Hebrew, right, like I read it and I hear the sound of like the way that we chant it in Hebrew, and the way that's chanted in Hebrew has quite a lot of emotive components to it, but it's like it kind of switches back and forth between like emotive and kind of logical, and which I think is kind of how the book feels too. But when I went back to compare Job, I read Job next to it. Or at least the section of Job I thought was going to be parallel, which is like that middle section, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, like that bit. It was really interesting because I switched, instead of reading the Job either just in the English or in the Hebrew without like any of the cantillation, like the chanting rhythm, I decided to do it to the tune of Eov. I'm sorry, to the tune of Ecclesiastes, to Kohelet, to see what Job would sound like in that same like tone, and it really helps like me make a lot of connections. So it may just be like, okay, music does that, okay, cool, but like it was also really interesting because Job's tone in that section is weird too, and like maybe he does have kind of anyway.
Can I just read one of these sections? Because
I
feel like so. This is Ecclesiastes 2, and he says, there's a difference between the wise man and the fool, but then he says into my heart in 2 verse 15, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said to my heart, this also is Hevel. For there is no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool forever. Since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does a wise man die? As the fool. Therefore I hated my life, because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me, for all is vanity and grasping for the wind. Then I hated my labor for which I toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. I'm going to skip down, but he hates his labor. And then in verse 24, he says, nothing is better for a man that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor.
Yeah. Well, so
this also I saw was from the hand of God. And so there's this at the end, or, he comes out of this sorrow for his labor. And then he says to enjoy it is this gift from God in the hevel of it all.
Isn't that relatable?
So first, think about how Adamic this is, right? So this, one could just say that this is, man, I did I worked the garden. He's in the garden still. And, or maybe not, maybe he's just been cast out. But let's say Cain has killed Abel, and I have to now like he's my inheritor. Like Cain's going to get all this stuff that I worked on, and like that sucks because like no matter what I do, like this murderer dude is going to get my stuff. Like he's my son, but like he's not a good guy. Like, and also Solomon, right? Like Rehoboam's going to get my kingdom. Like he's like not a good kid. Like what am I doing? Like I just wasted this whole thing. Because of that, I'm going to like hate all that I like worked for. And in part also it's really interesting because the word here for the work, amal, is the thing that is associated, like Adam is cursed with, has to now work the land, right? So like of course he's going to hate it because it's part of the curse. And like, not only do I have to do this like work that I hate, that I'm cursed with, but now I have to leave it to Cain, who like doesn't deserve it. And like anything I've tried to acquire up to this point, I tried to acquire wisdom, right? Like I ate from the fruit, right? That's the Adam reading, right? I ate from the fruit, I tried to acquire wisdom, didn't get me anywhere. Like that sucked. And now like, 24, that last verse you read, like what is the tone of that? Again, going back to this point, right? So you have this translation saying nothing is better for man. This makes it sound like this is the best thing possible, is one way to read that. But like I'll read you the translation I have in front of me, which is a JPS. There's nothing worthwhile for mortals to do but to eat and drink and afford themselves enjoyment with their means. And even that, if they enjoy it, only comes from God. Right? It's like much a different tone of like, even that sucks, but like at least, you know, they might be able to enjoy it if God lets them. And that, I think, to my like theory that Job is responding to Ecclesiastes, there might also be a thing where he misreads Ecclesiastes, because like if he read Ecclesiastes carefully, maybe he would have come to the same conclusion of like, even as wise as it doesn't matter what wisdom you do, and you can even acknowledge that wisdom is limited and like all those things, but like ultimately, like God will actually decide like in this lifetime whether you do enjoy the fruits of your labor or not, and like you may not, and like you know, that doesn't mean that the wisdom was wrong. It's just, you know, that's the best that you can do. Sorry, it sucks. Just basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, he like, if he thinks about his labor in terms of what will happen to it and the fleetingness of it, it makes him despair. But there is this like in the moment as he's working, there is some sort of enjoyment that comes from God, and does it seems like he is sort of making a contrast, because between, so he says, for God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight, but to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting. Is he saying there that like the sinner doesn't have that little enjoyment there, that maybe we all share the same fate, but to the good, that they could actually have that small enjoyment in eating and drinking and in their labor?
What?
You know, you see what I'm asking?
Well, I don't know. I mean, what I kind of read that as now, just personally,
Mhm.
is kind of just a perspective shift. Like you're both going to do the same thing. You're going to labor and toil, but to the one who is good in his sight. Like if you have your sight right, then you would like actually have wisdom and knowledge and enjoy it. And if
Yeah,
you're just a sinner, it's all just toil and gathering to you, and you're just.
is this like a Viktor Frankl type thing?
I don't know what that means.
Where like you're both, like he was in the death camps, the concentration camps, and he tried to distinguish between those that, like, they were in the same situation, but some people totally collapsed and fell apart, and other people rose and became
That's
heroes.
that's kind of how I read it, but I don't know if that's accurate. But that's kind of how I read it now.
Yeah.
Would that be something like that? And they not even necessarily sinner as in like bad person, but just like missing.
No, but
the
just
mark.
someone who's not,
Yeah,
who's
just
missing the mark,
yeah,
as well as the evil people too.
yeah.
So I do have an alternative way to read this, because the Hebrew is not as constructed as parallel as the English translation here is.
Mm-hmm.
And also you can see actually in your translation that the word God has been added to the sentence.
Oh yeah, right here.
Okay, so God is not in the sentence. In fact, God is not mentioned. It's like you have to go three sentences. Well, he's later in the sentence. He's at the end, but he's yeah. So another way to read this is, to Adam, or man, can go either way on this one, who had good before him. Adam was given wisdom and understanding and joy.
Mm.
And then he sinned. Velachot, right? And then to sin, velachot, right? And then as the sinner, Adam has now instead been given, right? So he could have, because he chose poorly. He had the good before him. He didn't realize he had the good before him because he didn't have maybe the fruit, but he actually had the good before him. Now that he's the sinner, what's been given to him? Now he has to gather and bring in like a harvest, right? And to latov, right? Now he has to give of the good to God. Now this is really interesting, because now this is kind of like, hey, Cain and Abel tried to bring a sacrifice, right? Like, or sacrifices. Like, now that he's out of the garden, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? If you read 26 on its own, you're like, okay, a sinner gathers and works to gather and collect, and like that doesn't actually seem like, normally when you talk about sinners, like that doesn't seem like a punishment, really. What is this, right? But now, like, instead of just like tending the garden, man has a different relationship to God, and this is almost like this is almost like a repentance process, right? Like now man, in order to like get to the good, has to gather and collect and to give of the good before God. And then he has that great phrase at the end, Gam zehevel rut ruach. This too is Abel, right? Abel, and a shepherd of wind, right? Because this ru'ut ruach is not, actually, grasping is never ru'ut. Ru'ut is either like badness, it's like the badness of wind, or like the emptiness of like something, or it's shepherding or companionship with. It's another way to do it, right? So this is Abel. The path of Abel is now you're out of the garden, you have to give back to God, and that is now. Do we read it as that's being a companion of a fleeting breath, or a companion of Abel, right, or whatever, something with that in that phrase, or do we read it as shepherding? And yes, shepherding, but shepherding the spirit, right, or shepherding the wind is like a very different thing than like grasping. Now he does use grasping in other places. I'm not saying he never talks about not grasping wind. I know, Jess, you like the idea of like the smoke that can't be grasped. That's fine. It's just not here.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that was making me think of like this first part too, when he talks about the wind being like on a circuit and coming and going. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's
okay. So that brings us into chapter 3.
Chapter 3, the great chapter.
Everything has a time, John Lennon and all that. So
wait. So oh, go ahead.
If I'm following you, Joseph, we're into Genesis. We're Genesis 3. We're in the rest of history now because of the fall of Adam. Is that what's happening?
It could be. I don't think the book is necessarily laid out linearly to Adam's life. I do think
but
ideas. He's going to talk about women later in like chapter 7 or 8, right? And that will be like more about Eve, I think, or as a way to read that to be about Eve. But so don't take it linearly. But yeah, I think in some ways this is a nice thing, because a lot of these words, not all of them, but a lot of the words at the beginning of 3 are words that appeared in Genesis 1 through 3, or at least the concepts have happened. So of course, like we have like the first sentence is kind of clear, right? So you have birth and death, planting and uprooting. Like you kind of actually, right? You actually have that like in Genesis. Then you have this really interesting thing at the end of this, or not the end of it. Where is it? With stones, right? So there's this like, if you remember,
time to cast away stones.
Your book of Jubilees or your rabbinic midrash, there's this idea there that Abel is killed when Cain throws a stone at him. Right. So there's this interesting thing of like, there's a time when stones are going to be thrown, and not cast away is one way to read it, but like, my translation has throwing. Like it's really pretty clear. Like the word is throwing.
That time to stone someone. All right, I like it. Yeah.
So there's this kind of like interesting thing of like, and there's also in 7 like with time to sew, and that's the word that when God made them the garments, right? So like there's kind of some interesting things happening. It's not every word. You can't say like every word here like clearly goes back to Genesis, but it's like I think 8 or 9 of them. So it's like a decent chunk. Yeah. It's weird.
Can I say something that kind of ties in the first? Because when I picked up this book, this one, I was like, oh, I have not really read much of any of this. So I just kind of cracked it open. And I ended in this chapter, was where I first started, which is probably just coincidence. But let me see if I can find this part. She said, Kohelet sees life as a series of shifting scenes. Human beings keep passing through different phases. The book maintains, so things never look the way they did even a short while before. For the same reason, what is appropriate at one point in life is no longer appropriate later on. That is, life is always changing, shifting in seasons, but being stuck in one season or another, people have no choice but to do things and think the things that are appropriate to that time. And then after I read that, I went back to the chapter 1 part, and it was just talking about all the different translations for Hevel that
Mhm.
people have done throughout the years, and that's what it kind of made me. For some reason, my mind connected those, and I was like, I wonder if like certain translations of this word have been for times and seasons, and for certain
Yeah.
people groups that help in that.
So she actually favors the word temporality for
Yeah.
heaven. I remember because she really wants it to be very time focused.
Yeah.
And
So I
it's
don't know. I
interesting
just
because there's a lot of people who've used this for lyrics, or played on it. There's a famous Israeli poet. I'm trying to remember which one did this. It might have been, was it? I can't remember which one. I'm gonna say one of the Israeli authors, poets, has a thing where like these times are actually all at the same time. And like there's not that they're separate times, but like there's within it, like the you loving and hating can coexist at the same time. Like you might love and hate someone at the same time. There might be time of war and peace might happen at the same time. Even like he has this like it's like he collapses it, but I don't actually think that's what this is saying. I think this is actually kind of going where you're like that there are times like, and for each time, because he's going to say like the only person who knows what time should be used for which is God, right? That's at the end of this, right? In the verse 11. Everything is made like nice or properly in its time.
Yeah.
And then like there's that weird phrase in 11 that I know you guys really like about infinity in the heart, which, or like whatever. We can talk about that. We've talked about it before. We can talk about it again. But but like man can't. Basically, it's that even if man has eternity in his heart or infinity in his heart or some sort of hiddenness in his heart, which is really where the Hebrew lies, is it's the word for being hidden, or like like only God knows what the proper time is for things. So like there is a proper time for everything, but you don't know it. So like you don't know when to apply the wisdom. Like you don't know when you're suffering because like you're righteous, and you don't know when you're suffering because you're not righteous. You don't, right? Like you don't have access to that knowledge, which is sort of
Job 28.
This is Job 28, exactly. This is Job 28, where you don't know those things that are hidden. Only God knows. Also God's speech at the end of Job, right?
Yeah. I had a question too. I think it was the other book, because he talks, when it's talking about there's a time and a season for everything, and then I think he related it to the creation when God creates like astrology even for times and seasons, and then it goes through this list in Ecclesiastes, and some of the things sound, or we would put in the category of evil, or even just things like good and evil. There's a time for good and evil, or something like that. And he almost says. And then he referenced the verse where God says it is very good. And I don't know if I was reading that wrong or if
that's right. So this is like even Ecclesiastes is about to say that. He's going to say that there are all these times, and all you can do. I think he does it down here in 13 and 14, right? Like all you can do at you don't know what the time is for.
Yeah.
All you can do is try to figure out the way to like maximally find the good and find joy in each of these times. But he seems to be implying even in a time to kill, and even in the time of war, and even in the times to lose, like even in those times, you should be finding good. And this also goes to
there's kind of this weird where I feel like if that is what he's saying, and you can correct me on this, but it feels like it's kind of causes you to take a step back if you're thinking of it that way, because even evil that is happening in the moment, it's like you step back and it says God said it's very good. So there's like
it's interesting. He doesn't say good and evil are not on this list. He does not.
Yeah, they aren't. Yeah, they aren't on this list. I thought he mentioned it in the other book.
He doesn't have that.
Yeah,
he does say like he seems to like this list. He says like you're not going to know what's going to go on. What value is there if you like try to make it one time when it's not the right time? But at the same time, like you don't know. So like you need to figure out the way to like get the most out of each of these times. I will say that like that very much is continuous into like rabbinic thinking, and probably what you read sounds a lot like this, where there's a midrash that says when God wrote it's very very good, that was the creation of death. And it's not that, and like death is not this like evil thing. No, we're gonna lose Jason. But actually death itself is also good. Like death is part of the natural world, and death was created by God, and it's not wrong. And in some ways, like even here, like it's saying, like if we read it, the Adam reading where this is about Genesis, like it's saying that like verse 6, right? There's a time to request and a time to lose, or time to seek and a time to lose, a time to lishmor, to keep or preserve, which is what Adam's supposed to do in the garden, and a time to ashlich, to be sent out, which is being sent away from the garden. And like it's sort of saying like both of those were from God ultimately. Both God, or at least God knew those two times. And like you have to find a way to be happy and find the good in the garden, and you have to find a way to be happy in the good when you've been sent out of the garden.
Okay,
You have to find it in the tearing,
it
and
seems to be what he's trying. The teacher's trying to do here, which he says, you know, okay, I can make peace with this. I know that he's sort of coming to some sort of semi-conclusion here, not too but strong, but I know there is nothing better than I know nothing better for them to rejoice and to do good in their lives. It's also that man should eat and drink and enjoy all his labor. Here's that idea again. It's the gift of God. And then we come to injustice. So he's sort of like, okay, I'll resolve this. There's this inability to know what times and seasons we'll have, but then he goes, but now we have within all this in the place of judgment wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness iniquity was there. And I said to my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time and purpose for every work. So he's like, okay, I'm going to apply this to injustice. And then he says in my heart, I said in my heart, concerning the conditions of the Son of Man, God tests them, that he may see that they themselves are like animals. For what happens to the sons of men also happen to animals. One thing befalls them, as one dies, so another. Surely they all have one breath, and man has no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. Why is he now going here in response to he's addressing injustice. He's applying this wisdom that God's will judge the righteous and the wicked, but there will be a time when the wicked are in the place of judgment, and that there will be iniquity in the place of righteousness. There will be that time, but God will make it straight in the end. And that, why is he now talking about us and the animals, and that we're alike, and that?
So this, I mean, I can keep going back to Adam in Genesis 3 here, right? Like if I wanted to, it makes a lot of sense. What did Adam just witness? The one son killed the other son, and in the place of judgment there was wickedness. Like the place of judgment being the exile, but like there's still wickedness here. The place of righteousness, which was the garden, there was iniquity there. And like, okay, well, he will judge, so I'm just going to say God's going to have, it's going to judge Cain and judge Abel. Like, but no, like it didn't work. And not only that, but now I know, because remember, Abel's the first person to die, right? Like now I know that man is actually not much more than an animal. Like he dies like an animal does. And the same thing's going to befall them. And like, there is this really weird thing at the end where you, in 21, where there's a question about like, do we like what's the tone of that is my question. Like, do we know that the life breath of humans rises upwards and animals goes down? Like, do we know that one has a soul that goes to heaven and one has a soul that either disappears or goes to Sheol or gets annihilated? There's a question over what Kohelet thinks of the afterlife, but like, this is one of those like, is he denying the afterlife here? Is he questioning the afterlife here? Is he affirming the afterlife here? All three of those possibilities are in the sentence, right? Depending on how.
Or is he just saying it's just it's unknown? I can't. Yeah. It's a thing that I can't know.
It is also interesting. This is one of the other like few places where we actually hear not just like that I am dust and ashes, but like man returning to dust from which he came. Like this is the acknowledgement that man came from dust that we get in Job and we get in Genesis, and that's basically it. Like there's one small maybe Abraham reference for it, but like it's a pretty rare thing in the Bible for this to be acknowledged. There's another like this seems like he's trying to compare himself to Adam type thing, or like using that language. And again, but then in 22, he basically concludes the same thing he had earlier in the chapter. He says like there's nothing good beyond trying to enjoy what your work and what you've been apportioned. Like in he doesn't use the word time here, but like your apportionment is very similar to your time. And
it seems like he's like, even so, like we're not any different than the animals. There's this wickedness and iniquity in the world, but still same conclusion. There's nothing better than to find pleasure in your work and in your labor.
Yeah, but even there, again, like he's sent it twice earlier this chapter. Like, if you actually find the pleasure, that's just because God gives it to you. Like,
Right.
He does all the things, maybe you'll get it. Like you need to do all the things and try to make it possible for you to find pleasure. But whether you actually find pleasure, like that's up to God, and you don't know. And right, like, that last question is really hard, right? Who's going to bring man to see what will come after him is kind of a question of like earlier, like at the end of chapter 2, like someone bad going to inherit me type thing. But it's also like what the afterlife is. Like, you don't know what's going to come after you. Like it leaves it very open. We also, it's really interesting. Earlier, we didn't say this in chapter 1, but I want to say it here because he's very focused on seeing. He says like, and I saw what was good, and who will let you see what's after. And earlier he said, I wanted my heart to see wisdom, right? In chapter 1. And it's interesting because Solomon, when he gets wisdom, he gets a hearing heart, not a seeing heart. And a hearing heart usually implies things like obedience in biblical Hebrew, right? A hearing heart is a wisdom of obedience. A seeing heart is one that like can choose good and choose evil, right? The seeing, like Eve saw, the fruit. That's where the beginning of her sin was. Like she like perceives it and sees like, actually the thing that God told me not to eat looks good, right? Like that's the first divergence of like,
Well, this makes me think of Job at the end saying like, I had heard of you, but now I see you.
Right. Well, that's an interesting flip because I think actually it's going the opposite direction where
that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, it's a really interesting flip because now it might be different, right? Because this specifically has to do with hearts and things. Well, we can talk about like is there a real difference there, or maybe it is undermining it, or maybe it's affirming it. There's another way to read that, which is like, I had heard of you, but now like seeing you seeing you may be an experience. We also get this in Sinai, where they see the thunder. They like lightning is mentioned separately, so they're not talking about the lightning, and they see the thunder, and you're like, something's going on where they're confusing. It's like synesthesia, right? Where where there's a confusion of seeing and hearing
because of the sound. They're seeing something that's not there.
That's interesting.
And then you also get in, again, connecting this back to the spies incident, after the spies fail, right? So there's something after that where you get the commandment of fringes. Okay, my fringes. Okay, so you get the commandment of having fringes on your garment, and it's specifically that you to not go after your heart and your eyes, but like that you listen to the commandments, right? Even though you're like looking at them, you're looking at them to remind yourself to listen, as opposed to looking at things you're not supposed to be looking at, right? Or following after your eyes, really, is the phrase in Numbers there. I think it's Numbers 28, maybe. So I think there's like another thing here that also connects to those stories, but seeing and hearing against each other.
It's weird. I'm thinking of like Job. The Lord speaks out of the whirlwind, but Job says that he has seen God.
Well, he says, I've heard of you, but now I have seen.
Yeah.
There's no actual object to this sight.
But now I have seen.
Which is kind of interesting. What did he see? And what does he mean?
There's obviously the imagery that God's speaking of. Maybe.
Yeah. And then I know you've connected this to his flesh seeing at some point. Right in chapter 27, I don't remember.
So it just says seen in that verse in Job.
I believe so.
What I do with my Bible when I go through and read is I cross out all the italics because it says they're added for clarity, and mine does not have you in italics, so like I didn't cross it out.
Hold on, let me pull it up. Maybe I'm misremembering, and it's quite possible. It's in the beginning of 42, right?
Yeah, 42. I mean, I'm not trying to put you on blast or anything. I'm just saying I'm going to cross that out if it's not there.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't say you, I'll just cross it out.
No, I
Make
guess
him do that right
it
now.
is conjugated, and yeah, I guess it is conjugated that way. So it's you. It is weird though, because it's not fully parallel. It's to the hearing of my ear I have heard you, and now my eyes have seen you.
Huh.
Yeah, it is. It's a very poetic way to say it.
Huh.
Though it also seems like it seems like an indirect hearing, like that. Like it's almost like I've heard rumors. I've heard about you from others, like Shema Ozan,
Yeah.
as opposed to like I've heard you. It's
Yeah.
It's more like I've heard of you. And
Yeah.
now I've seen.
Which is, that kind of makes me think about that. The lady Erica Brown, I was listening to her. I like it last night while I was working, and she said that she pointed out how Job is different than Ecclesiastes in that it speaks from a more personal place. Yeah, and Job, he's like in this verse, he's saying, "I've heard of you," but the whole book of Job, he's talking like almost to God, or like he knows God in a very personal way. And here he's kind of referencing, like saying that he's just kind of heard rumors of him. But yeah.
Okay, in Ecclesiastes 5, we get more of he's diving in deeper to the problems that he sees, the evil that he sees, but we get like in verse 18, we have quite a positive here is what I have seen. It is good and fitting for one to eat and drink and to enjoy the good of all his labor in which he toils under the sun all the days of his life, which God gives him, for it is his heritage. As for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth and given him power to eat of it, to receive his heritage and rejoice in his labor, this is the gift of God. For he will not dwell unduly on the days of his life, because God keeps him busy with the joy of his heart. All of a sudden, joy is in the mix. Like, it's not only like this is pretty good.
Oh no, we had joy earlier in 3.
We did.
Yeah.
But it seems at least it's
translated
emphasized more now. And this is after like chapter 4 and 5, which is pretty like, it's brutal.
Mm-hmm.
It's very like he's on hard mode. There are some
hard mode.
he's not taking any easy way out. But he comes back to this conclusion that about eating and drinking, but he's like more and more convinced of it, it seems like.
Yeah.
And then that God is keeping him, he's not dwelling unduly on the days of his life, because God kept him busy with the joy of his heart. Like, here's someone just happy in what they're doing, like, and that this is God not oppressing him with all these thoughts, all these is that what's happening? Or how do you?
Yeah, though I will say so.
I mean, we can skip back.
No, it's good, and we should skip up because I don't want to skip some of the stuff that are in chapter 4 and 5. There's some great stuff in there.
Yeah,
I want to get back to that hard mode, but
me too.
It's really interesting because if you look at the actual Hebrew text pre kind of Christians adding chapters to it,
what?
No, like, there weren't, like, there were breaks in the text, but like they weren't the chapters that we have here. And what's really interesting is that this is not a break. Like, this goes like it doesn't end until chapter 7. Like, this is the middle of the super long chapter that actually starts at chapter 3. So like the text is divided in a really kind of interesting way, where like it's really it's chapter 1. Though it's the first part of chapter 1, like the initial like pre-introduction. Then you have like a continuous section from 1:12 all the way to the beginning of 3, and then you have a continuous section from 3 all the way to the end of 6. So I don't know that you can just read this without the beginning of 6, right? Which is like, and because what's really evil here is that I've seen men who get all this stuff. A man is granted riches and property and wealth, the Job type man, right? And he doesn't want for anything, but then he's not permitted to enjoy it, right? And he can beg it even 100 children and live many years, but it doesn't matter, right? Like, and then it's better. And then I said it's better for stillbirth, it's better for a stillborn than one who doesn't have a proper burial, right? Which is also Jobian.
The question here, because we're at this part.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering if, I think most people assume the author is Solomon. And then even with Hevel and all the stuff we've previously read, especially coming to this point, could this be a reference to his older brother, sibling, whatever?
Yeah.
Like Bathsheba's first son.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And the man who begged all these children is David, right? If you read it that way, you go back and say, look, David got all these things, but he wasn't permitted to enjoy it in some sense. Like, or he could also be talking about Saul, even, because Saul is another good example of here, especially for this soul sickness that is used in at the end of verse 2 here. I don't know how you guys translate it, but
soul sickness.
So you don't. They just have his affliction. How boring.
Soul sickness.
No, it's not really soul sick, but he has like an evil sickness.
Yeah, that sounds like hard mode.
Yeah, right. So like, here's someone who like isn't able to enjoy his life, right? So it could be the previous kings like haven't been able to do this. So yeah, I could totally see this being about the Nephil, the stillbirth. It wasn't a stillbirth actually, right? He died after a week or something.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But like still, it's not exact.
But I don't think he was nameless, right? Because he died before the 8th day or something like that.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah. We don't have a name for him.
Because I think it says stillborn child, for it comes in and its name is covered with darkness, is what this translation says. But.
Yeah, and even with the Solomon theory, one of the really interesting parts of that is at the beginning it says like I was king in Jerusalem. So there is this theory. There's a known midrash that Solomon is actually steps down from the throne in his lifetime, and his son takes over. Or it's not clear that's a usurpation, but that like he could basically like he realizes that he's doing wrong. God says he's going to split the kingdom, and he steps down. And this book is written in that period when he's stepped down. So he's like seeing his son destroy his kingdom. He's no longer king; it's past tense. But like he doesn't know what type of burial he's going to get because he like sees people attacking his reputation, right? Like he's like, the things that you did are like bad, and and his son's going to double down on what he did, right?
Or if he was king, this could be he wrote this during the Ashmedai thing. With the whole
well, part of the Ashmedai thing is that he loses the throne, right? That he's deposed by the demon who's impersonating him, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about what I don't.
You got to hear this story. Do you know the whole story? I always forget details of it. There's a chicken that kills itself, which is like the best part.
Well, so there's a couple different versions of the Ashmedai story because there's like the version in the Jewish Midrash and there's the version in the Quran, right? And they're not the same. But basically, Solomon didn't know how to build the temple, and he was given all this wisdom, and he could speak to any creature, which meant he could speak to the demons as well. So, and demons are not just purely evil in Jewish thought. So he hears. There's this whole chain of like animals that he like consults with, but eventually, like he basically finds out that the king of the demons, Ashmedai, knows the secret to how to build the temple. Like that you need like the way to build it, like the best way would be because you can't use metal to carve the rocks. So how do you get these huge rocks, right? That's the question, right? So that there's this worm that
I've heard about the worm.
So there's this worm that can like eat through rock you can use that to shape these stones, and which actually is funny because we found such a creature now. Like recently, they've I sent it to you, Jason, I think a couple years ago, right? They found this like a weird wormy thing that does eat through rock. But people are like, is this the worm from Solomon? Anyway, so he finds this worm. He gets the worm from, but he has to make a deal with the king of the demons for it. He actually, like, the king of the demons is in the middle of studying Torah. It's a really interesting scene. It's like why is the king of demons studying Torah? Because like everyone studies Torah. It's like a normal thing to do. Well, no, just like in the New Testament, the way that demons like know who Jesus is, and like so, like they have to know the truth of who God is, right? Like that's like we kind of share that part.
Yeah, this is art of war.
So like Yeah, but it's not for war for us. It's just like he's studying Torah. Anyway, so he shows up in the middle, he interrupts him, says, "Hey, I need this thing." He's like, "Okay, let's do this deal." Anyway, there's this whole thing basically where he does use the worm. But now what's the next part of the story? Then the next part's the weird part, right? The next part, up to now is the part in the Talmud, except for the part that they say that the worm then gets taken away by one of the birds that he had consulted with and is like put on an island where no one else can get to because it was just a one-time use deal. But then there's this other part where it's like Ashmedai tricks him and then takes the throne and impersonates him, and he like no one believes that he's King Solomon, and he's like in the street and he's a poor man, and there is this like whole thing there because there's in Ecclesiastes they have the thing about the wise man who no one listens to, the wise old man that no one listens to.
Oh yeah,
right. So there is someone who does connect that to Solomon, but you can connect it to either time, whether it's his son is now in charge or the demon. And of course, you can read the whole demon story as his son being in charge, right? Like Rechavam could be Ashmedai, right? Like there's a whole other way to do that. But he gets back his throne usually in the demon story, right?
Yeah. When does the chicken kill itself? Was the chicken guarding the worm or something?
It's not a chicken, but it's this magical bird. Yeah, so it guards the worm and is the one that like knows where the island is.
Okay. And it like fails its job to guard the worm.
Story, and then it's such a good tangent. Okay, hold on. Ashmedai and Solomon's story.
Oh, are we going down this rabbit trail? We're already down it.
You don't have to, but like now we've mentioned it and it's interesting. Ashmedai, by the way, this comes from the word Hebrew. I mean, it's Aramaic, but it comes from the word shmad, which is so like destroy. So that's not a super like weird name. It's just the destroyer, basically.
Ashmedai means destroy. Oh, okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Shiva. Yeah.
Okay. So the temple was being built, but they couldn't use iron. So Solomon asked the other elders, how can it be constructed? They answer him. There is the Shemirah, which is the Shamir, right? The Shamir is the name of the worm that Moses brought for engraving the stones. And he says, where can I find the Shemirah? They tell him that demons know, you need demons, both male and female, to know where and they shall tell you. That's important because in Ecclesiastes, when he says, I've built gardens and planted vineyards and pools, and he has this weird phrase, I have shida v'shidot. And like no one knows what that phrase means. Some people think it means like he got all these advisors. Some people think it means he has all these servants. But like some people notice
he's got
that the word in Aramaic for demon is shade. So shida and shidot are actually male and female demons. And that's what he's actually doing is he's getting the demons to like work.
Nice.
Not enslaving. You have to also. It also helps to know the midrash. It helps to know the midrash that the snake in the garden before the whole thing was supposed to help Adam by gathering jewels from all over the world and being his servant. And that midrash, if you take the snake as one of the demons, like actually kind of makes sense in this sort of thought structure. Okay, so he gets all the demons, he binds them together. So he does some sort of binding is usually some sort of like not an exorcism, but similar to, right? Where you try to trap the demon so it can't do other things, right? So they would bind demons. All those incantation bowls they found in Iraq that are from the 9th and 10th century in all different languages from all different religions, but a lot of Jewish stuff was in them, and also Christian and some Mandaean and whatever, Zoroastrian. Anyway, but most of those bowls are for binding demons, not for making sure they don't get you by like casting them out or keep whatever, but actually for like chaining them down so they can't do things, right? So you're going to bind the demon. We don't know where it's located, the demons tell him, but perhaps Ashmedai, the prince of demons, knows. And he asks them, where is he? He lives on a mountain, carved out of a cistern, filled up with water, and covered with cobblestones, and then sealed with his seal, right? So there's a whole thing. Okay, fine. You have to find him. He finds out. So then Solomon sends for Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, who's the priest at the time, and he gives him God's ineffable divine name, which is like a magic power weapon. Okay, fine. I mean, that's a really weird way to say it, but like sort of is. And he gets all this other stuff to get all past all these things, and he gets through all the stuff, and he gets to Ashmedai, blah, 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 blah. He just asks for one small thing. I wish to build a temple. Where is the Shamir? And he says, and Ashmedai says, I don't have the Shamir, but you need to talk to the Prince of the Sea, and he's given it to the hopo bird. Hopo is one of the birds, and it's actually an unclean bird, but it's the national bird of Israel. In fact, it's a really cool bird, even though it's not kosher. And he's taken an oath, and you have to find it. All this stuff. There's a secret, password. This is like such a complicated story. What happens? Okay. So here's the part. Oh man.
Whoa, I'm looking at this bird. This is a pretty cool bird.
It's a crazy story. And she kills herself when she realizes that they get past her and steal the shamir, right? That's because she failed in her thing. Yeah. So she does like a seppuku type whatever. I'm dead now.
With a little sword.
and then Benaiah and then the high priest and Ashmedai have this like whole back and forth where he asks him all these questions about like wisdom and evil, about like, why did you do this thing, and you like did this thing to this cobbler, and like he has to answer. It's great like myth stuff, right? There's so much here. Eventually King Solomon keeps Ashmedai under house arrest, restraining him from leaving until the temple is finished being built. So this is the binding him, right, until the shamir is done. And then he asks him this question, is like, what's your advantage over us? And then Ashmedai says, if you remove the chain from me and give me your signet ring, I'll show you my power over man, right? So it's like, so he's seeking a wisdom that man should not be seeking. And Ashmedai basically tricks him into giving up the signet ring of the king and unbinding him. And why like Solomon just does that and listens to him is like crazy. They've had a really long interaction. I'm not reading thus far. They have this super long interaction.
They're buddies at this point. He's like,
Then he swallows Ashmedai swallows the signet ring, positioned one of his wings on the earth and the other in heaven. Thereupon Ashmedai hurls, so he like makes himself into a huge bow, and then it kind of like shoots Solomon 400 miles. And he is now deposed and expelled from his kingdom like a pauper begging for bread. Every place that he'd go, he would say, I am Kohelet. I used to be king over Israel and Jerusalem. When he'd say that to them, he would say, and this is the portion of all my labor. And he'd show them his staff, which was all that he had left of his dignity. Meanwhile, Ashmedai usurped power and impersonated King Solomon. There was none in the kingdom who could tell the difference betwixt them. Then the rabbis start to question, or the elders start to question themselves, saying, verily, he has gone mad. He will not repeat incessantly this one thing. What is it that we have here? So evidently Ashmedai just keeps like repeating himself over and over. And when he becomes king, like, he doesn't actually become like a king. You can tell that he's crazy. And then there's a whole thing where they like check his feet, because demons are said to have bird feet in this period. So they're like, they do some sort of trick, because he's always wearing socks or shoes or something, and they trick him to take off his stuff, and they realize that he's a demon, and then they realize that like Solomon's missing, and they have to go find him, and there's a whole thing. Okay, that's the story. And even so, Solomon was filled with constant fear and trepidation that Ashmedai might return. And thus it is written, behold, the bed of Solomon, 60 mighty men are about it, the valiant men of Israel. This is from Song of Songs. All of them wield swords, the most expert in warfare, each man with a sword upon his thigh, because of fear in the night. So it's tied together now, actually a whole bunch of books. And it's like the weird story. I think this is this full version is a 14th century midrash, but it's been preserved a couple other places here in parts. The Muslims have a different version of the midrash completely, which is also sort of interesting in the Quran. But yeah, crazy story. Yeah. And this is why I was king in Jerusalem.
This is when he wrote the book of Kohelet.
So this is all to answer Jason's question on the text. Back on topic. 7 minutes later.
The images that go through my head when that
I'll send you the link so you can read the full story.
Like the demon king just repeating himself, and he's wearing like footy pajamas, and people are like, "What's wrong with this guy?"
Get that guy in flip flops.
It's really funny. If you really want to see, it says like wherever he comes and goes, he wears socks even when sleeping. Like how awful is that? He wears socks and sleeping. Like this is like that.
Yeah, anytime someone wears socks to bed now, I'm gonna think they're
you now know you suspect that they're demons if they wear socks. Total giveaway, man.
That's
Anyway.
amazing. All right, so
Back to this. Chapters 4 and 5. Hard mode.
Okay,
Let's
chapter
do it.
4.
the oppressed.
Okay, the oppressed.
Ashukim. Well, here's really interesting because what does Solomon do? It's a big, you compared Solomon to Pharaoh. I know you mentioned that, Jason, really early. Solomon builds the temple by acting like Pharaoh and oppressing his people, right? He takes these massive levies of people and has them build. And like that word of oppressing them is the word that Rehoboam is going to say, like, you think my dad oppressed you? I'm going to oppress you,
That was Ashmedai. That
Well,
wasn't
and
Solomon.
this goes against what Solomon or what the teacher was saying, that like it's good for a man to find pleasure in his work.
Mm-hmm.
But then this kind of oppression like eliminates that. Like you can't find pleasure in being a slave.
Yep.
So I think he's trying to throw problems at his his conclusion thus far.
Completely right. I mean, he even says, and then I went back to my conclusion, Vashafti again.
Yeah.
We have it as again, but really, or then I returned. Like I came back to what I was thinking, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, these slaves are not so happy.
Yeah. Well, and then he's talking about the vanity of selfish toil. It's like the one who can't enjoy his work because of various reasons. But then I guess he doesn't do it here. Maybe he does it later where it's like someone is trying to do something through, like trying to strive through their work and can't enjoy it. But then we have
if you go back to verse 3, there's a little funky clue there. We have again, you won't see it in English, but we have the word Eden for the only other time in the Bible that we have it, but it's not used to mean Aden here. I mean, we have Aden mentioned as Aden a couple places, I think in the book of Ezekiel, but like we have it here as how do they even translate it? It's a great question. So it's the beginning of 3. Better Mishnehem Asher Lo. Wait, there. Yet you have it as this. They just have it as word translated as yet, but like it's Aden right there in the text, and like
Eden existed.
Know. Yeah. No, the one before it where it says Aden. You can see how they translated it. Aden existed, but Aden did not. Loed, all right. Asher Lo Eden Haya. So there's a weird little thing there. It's like
the Aden and like the Garden of Eden.
Well, so it doesn't. So here it's not. It's really interesting. Where does the word etymology of the word for Eden come from? Is like a whole question. But some ad is something like it's like persistence basically. So here, like the verb form or has become like to mean like or adverb form, I guess.
Okay.
Hitherto or still, but like we never have this word used as a verb anywhere else. Like it's just here. Or adverb anywhere else. Like this is weird. Ecclesiastes is the only book that has this, and you have it twice. So only once you have it once in masculine Adena and once in feminine Adena. But they're 2 verses next to each other, right? But it's also interesting because if you read it as like Aden and not as an adverb, it's like then I would read verses 2 and 3 as I praise those who have died already, which would be Hevel, right? Abel, from the living, Asher Hema Chaim Adena. So for they, for they like there you have to take it rhetorically, like they could have been living in Aden, as opposed to they still live. And better than both of them are those as Asher who were never in Eden. So here he's better to never have been to never exist. If you read Adena, the adverb as Aden here, like it's better to have never existed and never to have seen the bad thing, to ma'aseh hara, to see the evil thing. What's the evil thing? It's in the singular. It's weird. Unless you're saying it's the thing that happened in Eden, right? That actually makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
So yeah, he'd rather be Hevel than be alive right now. And if he couldn't be Hevel, he'd rather be living in Eden. And if he couldn't be living in Eden, no, sorry, the other way around. He'd rather never have existed. If he's going to exist, he'd rather be in Eden. If he's going to not be in Eden, he'd rather be dead than be alive outside of Eden. Right?
Right.
Because like, boom. Like,
wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah. And then he
Okay,
goes into two are better than one, because it makes a lot of sense, because now he's like, if only my sons could have worked together. If only they could have, like, as opposed to when one comes to kill the other, right? Like, they could have been something here.
they could have gotten a good reward for their
But
labor.
like,
But if
Yeah.
they fall, but
now
woe
one
to
could
him
also see
when
this the other
he's
way.
alone when he
One
falls.
could also see this as Solomon saying, if the two kingdoms, like, it would have been better if the kingdom be one than split in two, right? And
Yeah.
like post him being told that he's, the kingdom's about to be split, or
Yeah.
he's taking over.
I was also thinking about, because you mentioned Eden, God saying it's not good for man to be alone, too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And then the threefold cord, the third fold might be Seth, right? His third son, right? Now you have.
Are you sure it's not the Trinity? I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
Can the Trinity be overpowered? Do they keep each other warm? Do they fall and lift each other up?
I'm just kidding. I had to.
Yes.
Every time we see the number 3, it obviously means that.
What is this? What is this meaning? Again, I saw for all the toil and every skillful work, a man is envied by his neighbor. The fool folds his hands and he consumes his own flesh. Better a handful with quietness than both hands full together with toil and grasping for the wind. Also, a side note: how come this is indented and this isn't? Is this
I think
obviously more poetic?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the people who wrote that version of the
Yeah.
translation, because the Hebrew doesn't have that, right? Like,
I know, that's why I was
literally
asking.
it's a solid block of text. I have no breaks until the end of the chapter. It's like crazy.
Is this saying the fool is like a lazy person because he folds his hands?
Well, and also, how is that a response to the envy of the neighbor? So he's posing another problem. I saw all the toil of every skillful work. A man is envied by his neighbor.
Yeah, and well, the verse 6 makes a lot of sense as a response to 4. 5 doesn't fit exactly, right? But I mean, I would read 6 a little differently, but I would read it as one who is comfortable or tranquil, or like one who has filled his hand with tranquility is better than one who has taken 2 handfuls of labor and shepherding the wind.
I like that.
And
shepherding.
And that this is like, if you could just accept, and not be envious, and just like kind of have this, this tranquility of what was in your hand already, and not try to grasp double. Now, grasping double, again, like firstborn, I have like some ideas maybe there too. But even if we don't go into those ideas, like, you're gonna work twice. You're gonna try to. What's that phrase? Like, better one in the hand than 2 in the bush. It's kind of like that's kind of what this is, right? Better than 1 handful than 2 handfuls of toil. So like, don't envy your neighbor and try to like work harder, because like, don't be a member of our current society and work harder because you see what your neighbor has. Like, that's, I think those two connect much more clearly. And there it's like, because it's skillful work there. Now it's not oppression, right? Now it's like,
yeah. So here's someone that's doing good work, but his neighbor envies him because it's good. Well, could this be Cain and Abel again? Because Abel's work was good and Cain's wasn't.
Could be. I don't necessarily know. Yeah, it could go there. But then we still have to figure out how to fit in verse 5. And
well, it seems like there's no hands. The fool doesn't do
maybe
anything with his hands.
Maybe you have like 3. So speaking of 3s,
a trinity. It's the Trinity.
One of them does nothing and folds his own hands. I'm just gonna sit here, and then like one's doing 1 handful, one's doing 2 handfuls. So you kind of have a middle path maybe here.
Yeah. He does say better a handful with quietness. So he's like,
what about the guy who has pockets? Huh?
There's the
Yes.
fool no hands and
Which member of the
consuming
Trinity has
flesh.
pockets, Jason?
What's that?
Probably the one with his hands folded.
Wait.
He doesn't need his hands. He's got pockets. I don't know which one that would be.
Yeah. It's also really funny because, of course, what's the next line? Is he is neither son nor brother. Is it the Trinity?
Son or brother.
Alone without companion.
Yeah.
There's one alone without companion. He has neither son or there's no end to his labors, nor is eye satisfied with riches, but he never asks, for whom do I toil and deprive myself of good? This also is vanity and a grave misfortune. Okay, so he's thrown a bunch of problems. The envy, the people not doing enough or doing too much, the one who doesn't have anybody, and who deprives himself, and then we get into the two are better than one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that.
Okay.
The part about that last part reminded me of the parable of that rich man who like built a bunch of barns instead of I wonder if in that parable always reminds me of the one. What is it? Is it in Samuel, where Abigail comes out and Nabal or whatever the fool?
Yeah.
Who kind of has his barns full and.
Well, yeah, and later on in Ecclesiastes tells us to cast our bread upon the waters. You'll find it after many days.
Also,
seems like that's building towards that.
And 13 also goes to the whole deposed king, right? Like, better when I was poor but wise than now when I'm an old and foolish king. But there's
For he comes out of prison to be king, though he was born poor in his kingdom.
It's all living.
It's like Joseph.
Yeah.
Right?
Could be. And then the very end. Oh, wait. Oh, wow. This is weird. So this is even weirder. Not only because, so you guys added chapter breaks, but the Hebrew chapter break here is not the same as you have. We have one more line in this chapter. I didn't realize that.
What is
chapter 5?
Go to chapter 5:1. I assume it's just broken off.
Yeah.
Here. So, walk prudently when you go to the house of God and draw near to hear. So this could be Jobian, right? Like, you can do sacrifices that are improper, like you don't know what you're doing, because you don't know if you're doing evil, right? This is the beginning of Job. It's a word, at least it's one way to read the beginning of Job. It's really interesting also your translation, because I would say in the Hebrew, I would have thought it says, they do not know how to do evil. Or which is like a very different thing that they do not know.
They do not.
Yeah. So it's like, wow, yeah, it's a very different reading.
But what is this? Okay, so all right, we have two better than one, but better to be poor and wise than old and poor and wise youth than old and foolish king. Okay. There was no end to all the people over whom he was made king, yet those who come after will not rejoice in him. Okay. And then we have walk prudently when you go to the house of God and draw near. Why is he doing this? Why is he saying walk prudently after just talking about the wise king and the wise youth and the foolish king, and then the youth that becomes a king, but then he becomes
I have no idea.
And we get into vows. Like, why is he thinking about vows all of a sudden? Do not be rash with your mouth. Let not your heart utter anything hastily before God.
Yeah, in the phrase right after that, for a dream comes through much activity, and a fool's voice by many words. Like that seems that. I don't know what the translation of that is, but that seems odd. That's always seemed odd to me to just kind of
which part?
all of a sudden talk about a dream.
In verse 3.
What part seemed odd to you? Sorry.
Jess was saying that's kind of strange that it goes from talking about that king
Oh,
straight into
mhm.
this, and then he says, "Do not." And then he's talking about kind of, walking prudently, and then trying to not be rash with your mouth. But then he says, "For a dream comes through much activity." In verse 3, I don't know, just all of that, all of it.
Yeah.
You make a vow, do not delay to pay it. Yeah, it is kind of odd that it's sort of. I mean, maybe it's he's trying to say that like God is in heaven, you are on earth, and let your words be few. There, there's a I, there was this band when I was a teenager, Plank Eye. They had a song. It was so they're like a hard rock band.
It sounds like it.
And
Clank eye.
they have a song about quotes all this. It's awesome.
That's cool.
I mean, so one thing I can think of is Solomon, of course, is the one who builds the temple, right? And that is like his major act as kingship. So he comes out and like there's a clear connection for him between being king and being the one who gets to build the temple. But like in some ways there's a warning here of like, don't think you can just sacrifice and not actually repent. Like, don't think it's just mechanistic and like I built this temple and like that's just gonna like work, right? Like you guys actually do need to do the work. And like I think there is a connection there potentially. I don't necessarily think there's a break between 4 and 5. Like I think that like they do seem like here your tech, like the reason maybe that they don't know where to break it because you break it at where mine is broken or where yours is broken in these two chapters is because actually I do think they flow into each other to some degree. But yeah, it's weird. Now the whole like utter word making a vow, like that's usually like bringing sacrifices, right? So don't make a vow to God unless you bring the sacrifice. So I can see how it would be connected, like through that. The other thing that like I'm thinking about with the dream though is how does Solomon get his wisdom? God comes to him in a dream and says, "Choose," right? So like a dream plays a really important role, in that story. Though Jason, you did just mention Joseph at the end of 4, right? So there could also be another dream connection there. It seems like 5 is clearer as a dream that's tied up with vowing and to do justice and be the king. Like that seems a little like the Solomon connection seems a little stronger because like Joseph doesn't make a vow that we know of, but like
is there a comparison between just kind of like action and talking here too? I guess like actually making the sacrifice and then just saying you'll do it, where it's like don't be rash with your mouth, and like the dream comes through much activity, like actually having action in the world rather than just making empty promises or something.
I mean, that makes sense.
Well, activity, but okay. So in the Hebrew, the word here is not actually like work activity. It's not like doing things. It's kind of like Berov Inyan. It's like it's almost like a lot of concepts or like thoughts or like propositional stuff, right? It's not the right. There's certainly a comparison here, but like it's basically saying like your dreams emerge out of the things that you're thinking about in the Hebrew. So it's like which is like sort of much more naturalistic. It doesn't say it comes true either. It just says the dream comes. So a dream comes through much activity, right? So you're involved in something and the dream comes. But now he's thinking, if you go down a little bit, right, he's going to go back to dreams in 6. In many dreams, where's 6? In spite of all dreams, futility and idle chatter, rather fear God, right? So for all of the stuff that he got in his dreams, all this wisdom that he got from God in his dreams that he made this whole deal with God over, and it is essentially an oath, right? Like what was the point of it? Like he should have just feared God and like could have been better off than like having asked for wisdom in that dream.
Is this the first time he says to fear God? Because usually it's like for all his hevel and grasping and shepherding the wind, and now he's like, but fear God.
I think it might have come back once in 3, but I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
Um, and we get that same 3-part structure we had in 4, I think, in the section, like, we get, like, when you do make a vow, make sure it's not delayed, because that's better than a fool that vows and doesn't follow through. But better than both of those is someone who doesn't make the vow in the first place, right? So you have that same 3-part structure that we had of, like, don't be the fool, don't be the person who's like seeking double-handed, be the person who just like avoids, who's happy with your lot, avoids the situation in the first place, doesn't talk too much, like it doesn't cause oneself to dream, which is kind of interesting. So it's sort of an anti-fairy, like, dreams are dangerous, don't dream and end up in fairyland. Like, yeah, you can get things there, but also you can get hurt there. Right? Like, not that prophecy is the same as fairies, but I'm just like,
don't make a deal with fairies.
Is this the same sentiment as like here I am fretting over all the meaning of all this scripture and trying to figure out how to best do all this and that, when I would just wish I could just be like a simple car mechanic, just do my job and come home to my family simply without like a lot of drama. Or is that someone who's sort of unworried, just takes pleasure and is grateful over the things and is simply living? I always think of him.
Yeah, it's almost like the
mechanic when I think of that.
I mean, it could be mechanic, but I don't know if it's one. It's interesting that you said like all the scripture, because he actually doesn't seem to be studying Torah or scripture at any point in this whole thing. He's got
I'm saying like that. That's how I would describe it. Here I am. Like I'm saying,
isn't that curious? Like why? Like Proverbs would say, go study the Torah, the Torah of your father, the teaching of your mother, like whatever. Yeah. He doesn't go there. He doesn't actually like reference his parents very much. Or maybe David, but like he has a weird relationship with wisdom where it's not relational in the same way, and it's not instruction, it's not religious wisdom, right? It seems like when he says wisdom, he means Proverbs more than he means like Deuteronomy or something, right? Like, and that there is something there which is like odd, minimally.
He almost seems to be more cautious of wisdom, or like reverent or fearful or something.
Yeah, but he's also more cautious of God, right? Like he says, like, be careful when you approach God. You don't necessarily want everything that comes with. And that makes sense for both Adam and Solomon, right? Like the divine interaction is dangerous. I mean, like that means that's consistent with other parts of the Bible. But like, you want to be the holy person, you want to be the pious, you don't know what you're asking for. You want to be the wise guy. Not sorry, the wise man, maybe. Wise guy is different.
Hey, wise guy, eh?
So it could be, just to your point, like it could be like the curse of intelligence, where it's just like if you could just be happy with your lot and not be thinking about things all day, and like it just didn't bother you, that would be nicer.
Yeah, kind of this verse where it says, "Why should God be angry with your voice and destroy the work of your hands?" Kind of makes me think of the other verse he says later: "Dead flies putrefy their perfumer's ointment, so does a little folly." It's like if you're going to make these vows to God and you break one, it kind of ruins your reputation or as a wise guy or something like that.
And there is this flow, because it's like if you do too much X, then X happens. So if you do too much like concerning yourself with something, a dream's going to happen. If you do too much talking, then you're going to say something stupid. That stupid thing is going to be a vow to God, kind of. Is almost what he's implying, pretty much what he's implying in here. So like, don't let God be angered like by your speech in the first place. It could be the vow. It could be the foolishness of the vow. Or it could be that he's talking too much. Like all of that is kind of like God will eventually get angry if you're like down this path. Just like be happy with a few words.
Yeah, just shut up.
Don't like start this whole ball rolling, right?
Yeah.
Like if you could have just kept that one handful and been like at peace with it, then like, or quietness, whatever, quietude, that in your translation, like that would have been good. And then he compares it, right? And then chapter 5 is going to keep going to the lover of money, right? And here it's someone who's also not able to be satisfied. And like, if you just could have been okay with a little bit and, you know, enjoyed that little bit and had, you know, both joy and happiness and seen good in that little bit, then like you wouldn't have started this whole thing. But then the more you start getting money, the more you're going to want money. And then like, and he goes into this whole thing, right? Where then you can't sleep and it destroys your life because like you thought, you know,
Yeah, I hate my life. I hate my job.
just need a little more money, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
And it's like, it turns out, no, like you actually start this whole process.
I like, yeah. I like the part in that we kind of skipped over to the part 8, verse 8. It kind of seemed a little weird because it does seem like
yeah.
go from this to, and then it kind of is like wedged in there or something. I think it fits. So
Well, and he's going back to something that he had brought up at the beginning of 4.
Yeah.
Which is this oppression done under the sun. Then he went to this the envy of the toil, the value, you know, the person that doesn't have anyone, the value of having someone, then the wise and foolish king, then we get into vows, and then we're coming back to the oppression.
Yeah. And he says, don't marvel at it, because I like that part though. He says, for high official watches over high official, and higher officials are over them. Just the hierarchy of thing, and even the king is served from the field.
Yeah, but also thinking about Solomon thinking of himself as Adam, and like even he, like just like any human, is still kind of cursed with the curse of the earth. Like, right, like even he has.
Yeah, it makes me think of the I always think about the Song of Songs, where in that, what is it, in Kabbalah, the tree of life, where I think I was told it repeats, like once it gets to the bottom, it kind of goes back to the top.
Yeah.
And in Song of Songs, it says that he's crowned by the crown which his mother crowns him, or something. So like even the king is crowned by the people underneath him, in a sense, the field that he's. So if he's good to the field, it'll, you know, crown him with glory and honor or something. And if he oppresses it, eventually it's gonna, like, I don't know, eat away his brain, or just be rot.
Yeah, and there's also like, I mean, there's 2 ways to read the field, right? Because it's like both the actual land, right? So like the wealth of the king is always dependent on the land. Like he's not somehow disconnected, or like he might be at the top of the hierarchy, but like the hierarchy, like the base is still there.
Yeah.
And he's still bound to it. But there's also like the laborers of the field, right? Like that he's still, like he needs a king. There's no king without subjects, same thing, right? Like, it's like that that scene in Monty Python where he says, you know, he's king. You know, I'm king of these realms, and he's like, we don't have a king. What are you talking? Like,
I didn't vote for you.
Yeah.
That's a good reference.
But it's also the king. Like the last time we had the king was he was just let out of prison, right? Like the end of 4. We're coming back to this king of, like, you know, and you have this like foolish king, and the people will not rejoice after him, and like, you know, he has to kind of remember his debt to the soil.
Well, and
also a Joseph reference too, right? Because of the famines. And the king
is this also sort of an explanation of why the poor are oppressed? Because the king is served from the laborers, and so. And then it goes on to say, he who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver. He who loves abundance with increase. So when goods increase, the increase that eat them. And so this almost like, he's like, this is why someone would oppress people, is order to just get the increase and the increase of increase, because there's no satisfaction in what they have. And so, yeah. But and then it draws this little contrast, which is interesting, is the sleep of the laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much. And then he says, but the abundance of the rich will not permit him sleep. This is.
Yeah, well, it's interesting here because here laboring man is the laborer here is not the oppressed, right? Like he's using a different word. So it's not so clear the oppressed actually are so happy, but he is kind of saying that like there is a form of laborer, maybe not the oppressed, but maybe
is this my mechanic? My
be a free laborer, right?
Yeah. Your mechanic.
Yeah.
I
There's a
also
severe- Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I wonder why he uses silver. Maybe I'm just being weird with that, but why wouldn't you say gold?
Where
You know?
oh, because the word, I mean, it's just what that was what they used as money.
Oh, okay, all right. So it was not.
You use kesef. You use silver. Shekel is kesef.
He's not trying to do some sort of alchemy thing here.
No, I mean, I'm sure you can invent something, but
All right, all right.
yeah,
Let's do it right
silver
now.
is insufficient. You need the gold.
Yeah. Let's bind Ashmedai and get him to figure it out for us.
Exactly.
All right, there's a severe evil which I have seen under the sun. Riches kept for their owner to his hurt, but those riches perish through misfortune. When he begets a son, there is nothing in his hand. As he comes from his mother's womb, naked he shall return. Job. So to go as he came, and he shall take nothing from his labor. Okay.
Yeah, but you again also Adam, right? Naked he comes out naked. It's also interesting because it says he can take nothing from his labor. Is that how you have that translated in 14? Let's see.
Yeah, it says he shall take
nothing in his hands. But one way to read that is yeah, like he's unable to carry any of he's or there's no, but also like there's no like defect in his labor. I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
Well, I'm assuming he's talking about death, but he hasn't mentioned death. He says, as from his mother's womb, naked he shall return, to go as he came, to take nothing from his labor, which he may carry in his hand.
It's the next line, right?
Okay.
He will
and this also is severe evil. Just as
you have, so
shall he go.
So he shall go, but like that could mean to die, right?
It's implying death.
Exactly as he came, he must depart, right? So like, yeah, that's he's gonna go naked, as he came naked.
Well, this is also exile, isn't it? Like when you get exiled and you have to leave, you can't bring anything with you.
Like Isaiah.
All his days he also eats in darkness, and he has much sorrow and sickness and anger. Dang. Okay. And what prophet is? Yeah. So here's a man. This is very Job, because here's a man who has labored. He has taken nothing from his labor. It has all been taken away. And his days he eats darkness, has much sorrow and sickness and anger. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And this is a severe evil. He's emphasizing this is. So this is this all under the category, like under the thought of the severe evil which riches kept for their owner to his hurt?
I think maybe it made me think of
riches perish through misfortune. When he begets a son, there is nothing in his hand. Yeah, it's talking about the riches perishing. And the man hasn't died. He has become naked, and he hasn't taken but he hasn't been able to take anything from his labor.
Well, if you well, I don't know. I think it just made me think about it's in the next chapter. All the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet his soul is not satisfied. So even if you had all these riches, it's just to partake of them and eat them. But then even if you do that, you're still going to die at some point through, I mean, I guess it could be misfortune or not. I don't know. And then you just go naked, and you don't get to take any of that in your hand with you.
And then we go into the section that we read earlier, right? Which is
eat,
drink, and be merry, right? Like, really, but like,
it is good and fitting to eat and drink and to enjoy the good of all his labor, which he toils under the sun of his days of his life, which God has given him, for it is his heritage.
But God has given him power to eat of it. Yeah.
That's
so it's like he says all this, so then he says, but it's good to eat of it. And he says, but even if you eat of it, your soul won't be satisfied.
You're basically saying you can't take it with you. There's no point in hoarding it. Like, enjoy it while it lasts. Enjoy it while you can. Like, and if you can, you got to, hopefully God will let you do that. because he does, you know, give and take away. So like if he gives that, you know, to you, you know, just but
Yeah. This
yeah,
always makes me think of I mean, this whole book kind of makes me think of that too, just kind of the balance of that, and it makes me think of I think it was Hezi said recently, or not too long ago. I think it was in the comments section one time. He said that even the Nazarite has to bring a sin offering for like
yes.
not partaking in. Yeah, it's like it's an error or something to not partake in what God has handed you. Yeah, to go the monastic route and. Yeah.
Like to overly limit yourself. And
Yeah.
And that is God. Like God created the world for us as a gift, right? And like to
not
yes,
partake in the world.
there's lots of ways to misuse it, right? You can eat of the tree of, you know, knowledge, and you can do things that you shouldn't do and treat it that way. But ultimately, like yeah, the things that God gave us and tells us to use, you know, God tells us to have joy and pleasure and to take a wife and like all these things, like to limit yourself is in fact like also disobeying God and not taking the middle path, right? Because this is a very middle path book where you're like you're going too far, overly righteous. In fact, it says that we're going to have a chapter where it says do not be overly righteous. But I think so. It's 2 hours, guys. We might have to do this as 2 parts because we're 2 hours. We're just about halfway through the book.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
So maybe we have part 2.
Okay. The chapter
Next
6 is
time.
pretty good though. Can I ask you a question before we go though? It has to do with
in a couple minutes.
Okay, I can ask you at the end because it has to.
You have to go right now, Joseph.
I don't have to go right now, but like
we need to wrap.
You really want to get through 6? Do you think it's because it is the end of the unit? I get that. We could.
Yeah, but maybe we should just start here because I feel like I'll have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay. Well, can I?
Because this is Job. This is an evil friend of the son, a man whom God given riches and wealth and honor, so that he lacks nothing. Yet he does not give him the power to eat of it, but a foreigner consumes it. This is a vanity and an evil affliction.
Yeah.
Oops.
That is Job.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want to get into that in depth. Yeah. So let's closing thoughts?
Jason had a final.
I did have a question. Chapter 2, verse. I think it's verse 1.
Question.
No, verse 2. Verse 2. As this question about the Hebrew, I said is that Isaac? I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth. What is? I was just wondering if you had. Yeah, I was just wondering if you had anything to say around that. I was curious.
What
about
verse?
That verse. Verse 2.
To laughter, I said it is mad, and of joy, what does it accomplish?
Yeah. So the word laughter is Isaac's name, right?
I mean, so it's not in the same construct, but yeah, it's the same root, right? So here it's litzchok, like to laugh.
Okay.
The Yitzchak, which was.
I didn't know if he was like if there was some like implicit reference or something with that, because then and what was the other one? I said of Isaac madness and of mine says mirth, but is it simha? I don't know.
Simcha, yeah. So simcha. So it's interesting because of this. Now the translation is saying pleasure. We had this word earlier as joy, right? So we've had when you said like this is the first time joy comes up in 5. No, like it's actually come up a whole bunch, and sometimes it's negative, like here, and sometimes it's quite positive, where he says like just enjoy when you can, even if pleasure doesn't accomplish anything. Like that's what he's concluding here. Like pleasure doesn't do anything, but like maybe that's not the point of pleasure. Like, you know, maybe it's not meant to accomplish anything. Maybe like it's just meant to be enjoyed.
Yeah, he seems to be going back and at least back and forth from 2 to later.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the way Isaac is, like the whole story of Isaac and how he's like a reference to laughter and how God even, I don't know, like makes mention of that to them and is like, why did you laugh? And it's like, and it seems to pop up in this book, not just in this place. I think it comes up later again too. He talks about laughter and things like that, and just kind of being, I don't know. That's always stood out in my mind a little bit.
He seems opposed to that, right? Because he's like anti-laughter.
Yeah, I think you could
like not right. Whereas like Isaac, the whole point is like that there is a redemptive aspect of laughter.
Yeah,
He doesn't seem to recognize that. He doesn't have. I don't think he has. Does he have a time to laugh, a time to cry? I don't think he does. Right?
I didn't know if maybe he is against it. I don't know. I guess because maybe just tend to read this book like so charitably or something. Like I just like madness. I didn't know madness was
even
in
madness,
a despairing way, or if
madness.
it just meant like if when someone actually laughs, like you can't really make sense of it. It's just kind of a not that it's necessarily bad. It's just it is kind of a in like not insane reaction, but you know what I mean, like the nonsensical reaction or something. Because laughter
even
is
the word
not
for
a
madness
word.
here is like weird, because like in other books we don't translate this usually as madness.
Yeah.
Like it comes from the root to like to praise, and sometimes to boast, but like it's usually used like this is the word hallelujah, like mehulal, like this is where you get like hallelujah from. But like it's it's kind of like a corruption of that word. I don't know. Like it's a weird construct of that word where you're like, you'd think it's a positive, but sometimes it's not used as positive. Sometimes it's used as like to boast or to shine. In fact, but like here in this book, in this construct, it means it's to make a fool of or to seem like a fool. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of David, right? Like when he's dancing, right? And she's like, "You're making a fool of yourself." I don't think that it uses this word there, but like,
yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that laughter is bad. Like,
yeah, that's kind of
the word comes up a lot in this book, and like we should actually probably go back and like reread where he uses this word, and like, is it actually a negative for him, or is it just like people like don't get it? Like, like like you're telling a joke that someone else is hearing and they don't understand why you're laughing, right? Like he's kind of just like like what's this laughter? I'm curious. Let me see if I can.
All right, closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts. This was fun.
This was fun.
On the first 5 chapters of Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
I liked all the stuff about connecting it back to Adam and Abel and the imagery from the garden, and that was very enriching.
Yeah. I agree. I've sometimes read some verses like trying to take the perspective of Adam and then trying to take the perspective of Cain too. And if you do that, it's like kind of creepy. Because he like kills his brother, and then he's like, "Hey," God's like, "Hey, where's your brother?" And then he's like, "Go toil some more." And then all is toil and hevel. And he keeps just like, isn't it that name is just haunting him forever or something,
Abel.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and in some ways, I mean, this is that. I think we've talked about this before. How it's interesting after 7 generations, when his punishment should be sort of complete, like his kids are all named after Abel, right? So he has Tuval, Yuval, and Tuval Cain, but they're all Abel derivative names. So like there is this kind of there is a reading of Cain where he does atonement and repents, and like he tries to re-bring his brother's spirit back into the world, and he does that by eventually getting to this point where he has 3 kids, and one of them is like building tents, and one of them's making tools, and one of them's playing music, and it's kind of like these are like shepherdy things, and like he's kind of bringing parts of the shepherd back into the world as his like repentance.
That's cool.
All right, Joseph, closing thoughts.
I've talked a lot. I don't know anymore. I think that was a good closing thought.
All right.
It's a great book. I think we could go on forever. I mean, we could do a whole like you did a Job series. Like we could seriously like properly do this series. Like I have this 400 page book, a 500 page book, right? I have this 300 page book, right? Like when Jason said, like the books are huge. I haven't. They are. There's a lot of books there. I mean. There's 3 books.
Ecclesiastes says something about that.
And Kohelet, he says something at the end. There's no end to the books, right? That's an
yeah.
There's no end to books. There's so many books on Ecclesiastes. It's an awesome work. I think to Jason's point, like it does speak to moderns, right? Like it does. Like there's a lot of people use quotes from the book as like their titles of their books, especially like in the 19th century, early 20th century. Like it really fits into like the modernist anxiety, existential kind of not just nihilism, but just like like is everything empty? Is it not? Is there really purpose? Even like the golden bough, right? Like that's out of this, like but I mean, there's a whole. In fact, in the beginning of the Erica Brown book, somewhere she like lists like a whole bunch of works. I think Nietzsche has a work that takes from a line from here, and it does speak. In some ways, it's the most modern feeling book of Tanakh. And the way he's like willing to show us his personal diary. It's kind of like a memoir. It feels like, you know, a person wrestling with life, not being consistent, you know, changing his mind. Like it's not a book focused on God as much as man. And like, yeah, a lot of the books of Tanakh are really focused on man, but like this one is like really focused on man. Like it only cares about what's happening under the sun. Like it doesn't have much to say about what's over the sun. It doesn't know. It's hoping it's better maybe, but like, you know, how do we deal with this world in this life? And it really speaks. And so I think it speaks even to people who don't believe in God. Kohelet feels really familiar, and it feels like it could talk to a rock band. You know, it doesn't matter how materialist or atheist or whatever. It just has that level of like honesty, but also like willingness to wrestle and just like deal with what's in front of us, this world, and like there's no angels mentioned, there's no constellations mentioned, it's like forget mediators. Like it doesn't even think there's like it's just this is what we got, and I got to deal with this and figure this out, and like how do I do that?
And well, there's surprising parts where he finds there are things better than other things. He's like, not everything is the same, but there is evil, and there is this problem, and we can't understand everything, and but here's this joy, you know.
Don't be surprised by the evil, right? Like don't be like, the evil is normal. It's like part of this. It's like there's times for it too. Like there's times for the collapse of civilization. Like there's times for exile. There's times
understandable.
What
you can understand why it's there and what it's doing and how it. All right. Well, thanks, guys. This was really good. We'll connect later for part 2.
Sounds good.
Thanks.